many lies that happen to us, or that we hear a lot in our lives, especially in high school and things, that, we're not pretty enough, or you're not good enough, or you're never going to be loved. But it's kind of like we have a seatbelt strapped around our body, like we're in a chair, and it's the lies that are in our mind that make up the seatbelt that we have. There was a guy named Lee, and Lee considered himself to be an atheist. He was a writer for Chicago Tribune, the newspaper, and he covered court cases. So Lee was always trying to figure out the truth and the things the facts. And his wife came home one night and said that she had become a Christian. And he said, he was really worried about that because he had married this lady that they could just go do whatever they wanted to, whenever they wanted to. They could go out and party and do whatever. But he didn't realize the effect that Jesus would have on her life. See, Jesus changed her whole attitude, the characteristics that she had. It changed her confidence. So Lee really wanted to figure out what this Jesus was all about. So he decided to put him on trial. He asked a lot of different scholars and things that know a lot about Jesus, and he ended up writing a book. His name is Lee Strobel. He's a New York Times bestseller. And he started to realize that Jesus was the truth. He was living in the lie that Jesus wasn't real, but it took his wife to come in and change his perspective on Jesus to figure out the truth. See, Lee knew all about the lies. He knew the things that he believed that Jesus wasn't real. He believed the things of this world were the truth. But it took his wife to intervene in his life to change him, for him to figure out who Jesus was. It kind of goes back to, it's kind of related to the story of David and Bathsheba. In 2 Samuel 2:11, it says, in verse 2, it says, one evening David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone out to get her. The man said, she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Then David sent his messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Then she went back home. The woman had conceived and sent word to David that I am pregnant. Verse 6. So David sent this word to Joab, send me Uriah. And Joab sent him to David. Uriah was out at war he was out at war, and David had slept with his wife. So you can kind of get the picture here that David was an adulterer, and he was living in the lie that what he was doing was okay. So David sent a message to bring Uriah back to David's palace. When Uriah came, in verse 7 it says, when Uriah came to him, David asked him about Joab, or how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. Verse 8, then David said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all the master's servants and did not go to his house. See, David was really hoping that Uriah was going to go up to his house and he was going to sleep with his wife, so he could kind of cover it up that he wasn't the one that got Bathsheba pregnant. He really wanted Uriah to sleep with his wife to say that it was Uriah's child. David was told that Uriah did not go home, and so he asked Uriah, haven't you just come from military campaign? Why didn't he go home? Uriah said to David, "The ark and the Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my Lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing." So Uriah was thinking about his men that were out at war, and he said, if my men can't do this, can't come back and sleep with their wives and go back and eat dinner with their wife, then why should I be able to? So he slept with the servants. So David said, "Stay here one more day, and tomorrow I'll send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem, and that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on the mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. So the second night he was there, he still didn't go back to his wife. He still stayed with the servants down at the entrance of the palace. In the morning, David wrote to a letter to Joab and sent it to Uriah. In it he wrote, "Put Uriah on the front lines, then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die." So David tried to cover up the lie so much that he got Bathsheba pregnant that he sent Uriah, her husband, on the front lines to be killed. So he really tried hard to cover up the lie that he was living in. In 2 Samuel 12, it says, verse 1, it says, "The Lord sent Nathan to David. When he came to him, he said, there were two men in a certain town, one were rich and poor." Later on in verse 9 it says, "Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword and took his wife to be your own. You killed him with the sword of the Ammonites." Verse 13 it says, "Then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord." So David finally realized, because Nathan came into his life and changed his perspective on the lie that he was living in. You know, it took Nathan to come into David's life to change David's lie into truth. He finally realized what God was saying to him. Verse 18, it says, "On the seventh day the child died. David's attendants were afraid to tell him that the child was dead, for they thought, while the child was still alive, he wouldn't listen to us when he spoke to him. How can we tell him now that the child is dead? He may do something desperate." They finally told David that his child had died. He answered, "While the child was still alive, I fasted and wept, and I thought, who knows, the Lord may be gracious to me and let the child live. But now that he is dead, why should I go on fasting? Can I bring him back again? I will not go to him, but he will not return to me." The cool thing about this story is the fact that David still stayed faithful to God. Even though that his first child had died with Bathsheba, he had a second child named Solomon, and then he became king later on. So, you know, it's all about how someone comes into your life and changes your life. Because if you remember in Lee's story, he was an atheist, and his wife came in and changed his life, and then he believed the truth. In David's situation, it was, the Lord sent Nathan to David to change his life so he could see the truth. So it's kind of like that in our lives, no matter what you're going through or what you're going through at all, sometimes we've got to have people that come into our life and change who we are. So don't believe the lies, believe in the truth. Believe that God can do anything in your life, and that He can change you no matter what.